hello, and welcome to the Juicebox Lounge, where we talk true crime and anything and everything from the latest gossip to, just anything. Viewers' discretion is advised. So, yeah, let's hop right into it. Okay, but anyways, today's topic is Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer. Okay, I had some requests on my live stream when I first talked about coming out with a podcast to do Jeffrey Dahmer. So we're going to do that today, and let's just hop right into it because I love all things true crime. So if you're interested in true crime and you love to know a little bit more, then stick around because it's about to get really messy. No, seriously. It's about to get really messy. This guy was a character. Okay, so Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, okay, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal or the Milwaukee Monster. And Jeffrey was an American serial, and he was also a offender who and dismembered 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991. Okay, a little backstory about Jeffrey. Jeffrey was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. Okay, that was on May 21st, 1960. Jeffrey would describe, like, in his earlier days that, like, his mom was just crazy and that she was, like, almost jealous of him and his brother. Whenever Lionel would be away on business trips and he would come home, she just kind of wanted all of his attention, and she, like, didn't want to share that time with her, because he would come home and he was so excited to see the boys, really excited, and she was just, like, really jealous of her own children. Because she loved attention, and she seeked it often when Lionel would come home. She just basically wanted him to herself. But Joyce, let me tell you a little bit about Joyce, okay? Joyce was going through it, okay? They didn't know this at the time because it wasn't really talked about back then. They didn't really talk about things. They just knew that she had a mental illness. Lionel said that she struggled with mental illness and she was using. Lionel, he was gone quite a bit. He worked out of town. He was, trying to get his doctorate in chemistry. And so he was continuously busy, and he was just trying to, get his doctorate degree so that he could provide a good life, like for his family. So, I mean, like, he was doing what he could to make it work, but they just was not having it. Lionel, he claimed that his wife was mentally unstable after she gave birth to him. Like, everything just changed. And back then, like I said, they didn't really have a name for it, but she was actually going through postpartum depression. It is actually mentioned. She didn't find this out till later that that's what she was going through. But let me just tell you, postpartum depression will make you feel like you're crazy. Didn't know it at the time that that's what she was going through. Now, Jeffrey's father said that at a young age, Jeff became just fascinated with bones, and he was really interested in like going and finding little animals, like squirrels and just small little animals that fathers take their kids. So Lionel didn't really think that it was an issue because he thought that this was just kind of like normal behavior, like he didn't think that he would be like that, fascinated with it. But he was a character. Lionel would describe that, Jeff was just a really laid back child. He was quiet, and he was just a good kid. And then, like, when Jeff was like 4 years old, he had a double hernia surgery. And then after that, like, they started seeing like different kinds of changes in his behavior, and like they didn't really know how to like describe it. He just had a really traumatic recovery with all of that, and then like it was very painful for him, and so it really changed him. He just started really acting out of the ordinary. And when his brother was born, the family, they was frequently moving, and it was just a lot mentally on him as a little kid. By his early teens, he was diagnosed with tension, and he was also named as friendless because he was just a very backwards, teenager. He didn't really go out with anybody, hang out with anybody, or anything like that. He also claims that like his compulsions towards like necrophilia and murder began around the age of 14 when he started drinking. And the tense from like his parents arguing all the time, it just caused a lot of tense in the house. And he just had all these different emotions, and he didn't know how to like, he didn't know how to deal with them. He didn't really talk to anybody about his feelings. Like, he didn't know he didn't really talk to his dad or anything or anybody. But Jeffrey had started drinking at age 14. And by the time this, just like mental, like he was like thinking of it. Like he had it in his mind, and he thought about it and he thought about it. Well, at the age of 18, his alcohol consumption would just spiral. Like it would get really bad. And he would drop out of school. And so his father insists that he joins the army, the military. And so he did. He enlisted in December of 1978 that he would join, and was posted to Germany shortly after. Jeffrey continued to drink while he was in the army, and it just continued to spiral until 1981. The army discharged him. German authorities also say that later they would investigate possible connections between Jeff and the murders that happened in that area at the time, but it wasn't believed that he took any of the victims while serving. So, like, that was never confirmed, but he was a person of interest. After Jeffrey's discharge, he returned home in Ohio, and he was arrested like almost immediately. As soon as he gets home, he was sent to he was arrested. And so after that, his dad just had it up to here. He was like so done with it. He was like, okay, I'm sending you to live with your grandma. So he goes and lives with his grandma, Catherine, in Wisconsin. But his alcohol problem was still continued to follow him. And his grandmother was just like, she was very, very faithful, and she was just trying to help him. But Jeffrey's actions would be like a lot for her. And it would just, it would just be bad. But then he was arrested the following summer for indecent exposure at a fair. Some boys claimed that he was doing things to himself in front of them, and he received a 1 year probation sentence for that, which is wild. But over the time between 1978 and 1991, 17 victims were found, and he was just very selective. And it was mostly black men and boys who were Latino and just, people of color. But he would take them, like, it started out pretty wild because he would take them to a bathhouse. And then, like, the person at the, to get the ticket or whatever, was just noticing they would have to call like an ambulance for some guys because he would slip them something in their drink, and then they would just be like, unconscious, and he would just leave them. And so finally he was kicked out of there. That was the first, like, wild situation. And so, like, he was kicked out of the bathhouses. So that took away, like, that, hey, that was that. And he knew he couldn't do that anymore. So he decided to, come up with a different idea. Things like that wasn't working. Jeffrey also would have, like, multiple jobs, and then he would lose them because he was just very careless, and he was just doing things, that he really wasn't, like, supposed to be doing. But then, like, he decided, oh, this will be a good idea. He decides to start bringing them to his grandmother's house. Woohoo! Yeah. What a smart idea, right? So he starts bringing them to his grandmother's house and getting them all messed up so that he could do things. He would bring, like, several of the victims there. And one of the victims, his grandma, was awake. And this happened, like, this was multiple things that happened. So the first victim that he had, his grandma woke up in the middle of the night and noticed that there was a gentleman downstairs. He had slipped something in his drink, and the grandmother was like, no, I'm going to stay up, and I'm going to watch this guy, and I'm going to make sure that he gets on the bus to get home. And, she knew that something was up, but she couldn't, like, quite place her finger on it. So, like, she was like, okay, I'm just going to sit here, and I'm going to make sure this guy gets home. So this little gentleman, he ends up, like, the next day, like, the entire time, she sits there and she does wait, and they go and put him on the bus. But this guy is so messed up. He gets on the bus. He rides this bus all the way out to the end of the line. Okay. And this guy gets off or whatever, and he wakes up in a hospital. And the nurse tells him, she's like, sir, you OD'd. He's like, I don't do that stuff. But he had remembered that he had been with Jeff the night before. So he goes to authorities. And back then, so let me clarify this. So back then, they didn't really take people of color seriously. Like, he went in. He tells the police officer, you need to check this guy out, because I woke up in the hospital bed. I'm missing my $200 watch, and he tells them, and they just play it off. Jeff got away with, like, doing all this stuff over the course of years. Like, I mean, he was just doing different things, and, like, he didn't look like this person that was just, like, someone who was, kind of mad up here. They weren't taking that in consideration. So that guy tried to push it, and was like, what can you do? The police officer goes and checks Dahmer out, his grandma, because of his grandma being there the night before, because she did watch him the entire time. She didn't get to see that he's the one who slipped the Mickey, And so he was able to, like, stand up, say something on his behalf, because she really was there. But, like, after that, it was still, like, a crazy situation. Well, the next person that he brings in is a 13-year-old boy. And this boy, he gets away. Like, he actually escapes. And Jeffrey had claimed that he wanted to take pictures of him, and that he was even going to pay him for these photos. But when he got home, that boy, they had a whole trial over it. The judge was lenient and only give him 1 year of probation. So, like, he basically got off the hook with that situation too. And Lionel also describes that, like, he just, like, when he looked at the father, he just knew that like he could just feel in his heart that like, you know, this is awful. Like, you know, what do you say? And Lionel also would ask Jeffrey, like, why did you do this? And Jeffrey would play it off like, they're trying to set me up. I didn't do this, and blah, blah, blah. But he was doing these things, like, over a course of time. And so, like, after, like, you know, after all that's said and done, Jeffrey decides, you know what? I'm gonna, you know, I've got to get my own apartment. Like, after that happened, his dad's like, you know, you can't live with your grandma anymore. You're gonna have to get out, and you're gonna have to get on your own and start, you know, doing your own thing, because we've had it up to here. And so Jeffrey gets his own apartment. Woohoo! You know, like, now it's a new beginning for new things, new adventures. And he's going to be by himself so he can do other things. But the neighbors, over a course of time, his neighbor kept complaining, like, different things were happening. And, like, the neighbor, she was complaining, and she was also of color. And she had been, like, telling the police, and please check this out because something ain't right. And, you know, talking about the apartments, they can smell, they can hear people screaming, and, you know, but they weren't taking her seriously. Until 1991, Jeffrey would be caught. How did he get caught, you may ask? His very last victim was running out the door. He says, dude, I don't want to be here anymore. So he just, like, skips, you know, like, he like gets away from Jeffrey, but, like, he had to fight, like, woo, to get out. You know what I'm saying? Like, he had to really, really push to get him out, to get out of there. Well, he finally escapes, and he's running down the street, and he has handcuffs on. And so, like, he's trying to tell the police, like, this guy in this apartment, he's trying to me, and I need help. So they're like, okay, sir, okay. So finally, they go upstairs. The police are like, you know, can we get the key to the, you know, to the handcuffs or whatever? And so Jeff's like, yeah, you can come in. They're like, God, you know, they know that it stinks in there, but, like, you know, they're kind of just looking for this key right now. And so, he played it off like he couldn't find the key at first. And then he's like, oh, you know, stop BS, and where's the key? And he's like, I think it's in my drawer. And he's like, I'll get it. And then the police officer's like, step back, you know, like, I'll get it. Police officer opens up this drawer, and lo and behold, what do you think is in this drawer? Pictures. The key, but pictures of all of his victims. Some of them were dismembered, and they were just, I mean, all evidence there. So now they are treating this like a crime scene. They're like, okay, all right. So they get that guy out of there. They have to evacuate everybody because now this is a crime scene. They found things in the fridge. They found a head, a human head. They found all kinds of things. He also had these big, like, barrels that had, like, all of his, you know, people. Because what he was trying to do, like, he was trying to preserve them so that they would, like, live. I mean, like, he was, like, pretty much trying to, like, bring them back to life. Because he thought that if he could preserve them, that they could just, like, stay forever. But, you know, he had a wild mind. And so they found, like, literally, they found out, like, he even states, like, Jeffrey even states in his interviews that, like, he was just waiting to be caught. There was a few times that, like, he really thought that he was going to get caught, but he didn't. And, he was just, like, you know, he just admits to everything. Like, he just goes on to tell every little detail. And he goes back to his first victim. His first victim, he had, And it was in 1978. It was right before he went and got enlisted. Because his parents, so like, here's another thing, like, you will notice that I have ADHD. So like, if you need some ADHD content, here it is. Okay, so his parents, like, his mother left because like they were getting divorced. So his mother leaves, takes his little brother, and Lionel is off leaving, and he's also with his, you know, with his new wife, and, you know, they leave the house or whatever. Jeffrey's left at home by himself at the age of 18. This is about the time that, like, he had been alone because everything had just happened. But anyways, so he'd been like watching this guy. He was running, and like he had been like waiting because he was like, you know, I'm gonna get this guy or whatever. So he decides not to get that guy, but there's another guy who's hitchhiking who needs a ride to a concert. And so he's like, come back to my house, dude, and we'll have a couple of drinks and a couple of brewskis, and we'll chill, and, you know, and then I'll take you to the concert, whatever. You know, he's like, okay, dude, cool. Well, Jeffrey decides that he's going to try to give him some loving. But this guy don't want no love. He didn't want no loving. Shocker. He tells him that he's not like that, and that he's just joking. Well, the guy's like, I'm leaving. You know, I'm not going to be able to make it to the concert now because of, you know, all this. Well, Jeff decides, since he's going to try to leave, he's just going to toss a dumbbell over his head. Pop. Yeah. This guy was struggling, trying to fight for his life. And Jeffrey then suffocates him until he just ends. And that would be his first kill. And so, back to where we were. He goes in, you know, the interrogation, and he's just like letting it all out, talking about his first victim to his last victim. And he's just like letting it all out. He's just letting it all out. Interestingly, he, you know, he went to prison or whatever, and he, you know, this would be a very, very popular case, especially with all the crimes that he committed. I'm not going to mention any of the family's names, just out of the privacy and all of that. Rest in peace to all of the families who had to endure all of that. That was a horrible, horrible situation. But, you know, but interestingly, Jeffrey wouldn't live very long in prison. He would then pass away by the same way that he killed his first victim. Karma, if you ask me. Karma. But what do I know? Thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this or didn't enjoy it but wanted to know some information on it. Have a great rest of your day. Make good choices. Okay? Don't be out here doing things like that, okay? Let's be kind. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your night. And yeah, you have just entered the Juice Box Lounge. And I hope you guys had a great time.